achieve success with Global.Media.com. Every step forward is a new beat to your drum. Achieve success with Global.Media.com. Let's celebrate it with or without champagne.
Hello. Super Wednesday is what I call this day. Super Wednesday. So it's Wednesday's always a big day. Well, at least now this Wednesday my cycle is a good one, right? It's my first room today. Got to know Dr. Yvonne as our star. We're bringing her message. Her conversations. So I'm excited. But do make sure you join my Being Your Authentic Self in Business live later on. Where are we? 4 hours away? Yeah, 4 hours away. So make sure you join that one as well. That's different conversation. So, but let's concentrate on this one. So this is one of those big conversations I think we don't have often enough. It is a weirdism. Alas, to say, I got a star who knows the topic, who helps people through the toxic experiences, I call it that, and has strategies that we can all learn from. For those who don't know me, for those who do know me, I'm Eni Osang. My mission is to make people famous, right? Mac, I see you. Welcome, Mac. Mac's a superstar on this live. I'm sure not many know. So I do tell the story quite often, Mac. People who, so when I was on Clubhouse, and I said, I would never speak online. I would never speak. I'm too scared. I'm too nervous. Mac was like, Eddie, just come on stage and say something. And I did. First time I ever spoke online was on Mac's show, Clubhouse. And that was a good, 3 years ago? And then I found out through Mac that LinkedIn Live was coming. LinkedIn Audio was coming, should I say. And I read this article, and that's what got me into LinkedIn Audio. Matt, I thank you, my friend. Thank you for being here. He's a LinkedIn expert, so he does help people how to use LinkedIn properly. If you haven't been to his show, his Social Saturday Live, Mac and friends, do connect with him and do go along. It's always a fun show, so I try and join as often as I can. Mac, welcome, my friend. I see you. I'm glad you're here. That's nice. You're a live legend now, Mac. I just do loads of them, right? I get to bring people like Dr. Yvonne to the world. Like I always say, my mission is to bring people who do amazing things, right? People who have unique solutions. Dr. Yvonne's one of those people. I'm talking because, and I'm comfortable talking because when Dr. Yvonne tells you what all the things that she does, you'll be amazed. She takes more time than me, right? So I can just carry on waffling and still taking my time because I know she will amaze you what she does because she has many strings to her bow. Cyrus, welcome, our podcast guy. Glad you're here. Liana, thank you for joining us from Duluth in Minnesota. Hopefully I pronounce it properly. I never know, right? But thank you for being here. Look, anyone else who's here, please do drop us a comment. Of course, our friend Michael is in the studio as well. And you're welcome to come in the studio and share with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. I know this is a sensitive topic. And I guess what stays online is online, right? What's said online is online. So I guess I hope you'll be smart in how you share stories in the studio. I won't necessarily say this is my problem. So find creative ways. Use other people's names. Use friends. Use people that talk about someone as a way to give us the message that you want to give us. You haven't got to expose yourself unless you really are comfortable sharing your real life stories. And I know what I mean. Hopefully, you know what I mean too, Dr. Yvonne, especially, right? Hopefully, people, speaking in third person. You haven't got to say this is your problem. People, we'll get it. We'll get it, my friends. Look, before I give Dr. Yvonne the mic, my thing is always to help you to write your book, publish your book, market your book, and sell your book. And then also I want to make your book a bestseller. So this room is the start of a book. Dr. Yvonne is working on an anthology for people who've experienced narcissism and abusive relationships. So that's an important one for me. So this is the first of many. You know, the first one, the first one's going to be every 2 weeks. You know, so if you want help to publish a book, let's talk. If you've got a book that's not selling, let's talk. If you got a book that is on paper, not published, I definitely want to help you with that. Enough about me, Dr. Yvonne Star. Welcome, Yolanda. I see you. So Yolanda and I started work on her book yesterday. Intertwined is called. You're gonna have to wait to find out what it is, right? Intertwined is an interesting story of family dynamics and relationships. You're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to now connect with Yolanda. So I tell you what it is, right? But we'll get there. Mac, I'm always happy to talk books with anyone, my friends. Let's talk. And I'd love to publish a book. It's my goal in life. Enough talking from me. Let's talk to Dr. Yvonne. Dr. Yvonne, how are you today?
I am doing really good, Annie. How are you?
The joys of being here. I love bringing new people to events, and it's a true joy to be here with you to share your message and your solutions.
Well, it's an honor to be here with everyone, and I'm so excited because the turnout is fabulous. So thank everybody for taking this time. So a little bit about me. Um, I am I am a Caribbean person living in the United States of America, and the reason I start with that is because that used to be a really great thing to say. Now it's a little bit different and it's haunting in a way. Um, so, my background is a legal background. I did toxic tort litigation for about 15 years. Um, my story as to how I became a mom, getting married, and having children, um, that's going to be part of the book as well because they were blessed events for me. I wasn't supposed to be able to have children. And, the universe saw it different. And with that, I did a lateral move and I opened my own firm. It's a consulting legal firm, and we open businesses. Um, we streamline businesses. We write uh, different types of HR materials. We launch and all of that stuff. So we're basically a one-stop shop for people that are starting new businesses and for people that have businesses but they don't have the business acumen, so they don't have all their paperwork together, or maybe it's organizational. CAC, Cannigan Associates Consulting, does all of that. But it took an interesting turn in my life around 2017. Uh, in 2017, I started kind of waking up. And it's funny now because they're using the phrase woke. But it was my journey understanding narcissism. So, since my freshman year of my undergraduate study, I have been devoting a lot of my time, my personal time, it's not paid time, personal time. It's what I give back to domestic violence. And being Caribbean, right? So being Cuban and Jamaican, my father was Cuban, Panamanian, my mother is Jamaican. I grew up in a culture where, and a lot of people grew up like this, but I can only speak from my own experience. But I grew up in a culture where hitting your wife or hitting your children um, was ordinary. It was ordinary. And the way that those women back then would handle it is the husband would get angry or something like that and beat up the wife on the weekend or whatever. And The next day, which is usually Sunday, it was usually a Sunday, um, all the other women would take their daughters. This is the part that really got me. Would take their daughters to witness and see the woman who was beaten um, that weekend. So it was just a revolving cycle. But the problem that I saw when I was about age 11 was I don't, none of the boys would have to go and sit through this. And I got tired of seeing that when I was age 11. And so for me, my whole perspective changed on marriage, on relationships, on having children, on all of that. And it was due to the inherent domestic violence that I had witnessed um, in people's homes. Now, when I say that, I never witnessed anything like broken bones or anything like that, but any level of domestic violence is unacceptable. So I started volunteering my time back then. Consequently, since then, I have served on over 8 domestic violence boards from Racine, Wisconsin to California. And of course, I live in Illinois. So I've been very active here in Illinois. But even in that, there is division. And when I say division, I'm talking about the color divide in this country. And, you know, domestic violence covers everyone. It's kind of like cancer, you know, which is a horrible thing to liken it to, but it's kind of like cancer. It does not discriminate. Domestic violence can be anyone, anywhere, anytime, and any level of income. It does not matter. But it is something inherent in a lot of cultures as well. Some Spanish cultures call it machismo, you know. But anyhow you look at it, it is unacceptable. The one thing I didn't realize is domestic violence is also verbal. And that verbal part is what breaks women down mentally. And so this just became a driving force for me. And I've written several programs for women that have been isolated, because that's one of the first things they do in domestic violence. They isolate you and then they continue to step on your neck until you really feel like a worthless dish rag. So the programs that I have written are for women that are coming back and saying, you know what, I've had enough. I want to take control of my life. How do I do that? And that's where I come in. So this subject, to me, it hits home very hard, especially if you have daughters. But the thing to remember is your sons. What do you release on the world when you don't teach your sons that words are much more effective and acceptable than hands? So we don't need to teach our daughters, like what I saw, oh, this is what goes on in marriage, you know, or in relationships, and it's acceptable as long as you don't end up in the hospital or something like that, which is crazy. Um, and the other part is sons. This is how you treat your wife or your other half. This is how you love. And you can always have disagreements, but it doesn't have to come to the point of diminishing the capacity or the rights of your other person. So, anyway, with that, I started helping more and more women and men learn how to handle the abuse that they're going through. How do you change or pivot the dynamic. I let's see, what did you say, Mac? Men should go to that would be a great idea, you know? But honestly, from the minute that a child is born and it's a male child, you should be teaching that child about chivalry, about how to take care of their loved ones, especially their wives. And they should know that when a home is unhappy, it's because the woman is unhappy, the wife is unhappy. And your blessings will go right out the window if you have an unhappy wife. You will not have a happy life because she then becomes the reflection. So instead of giving them what they want, the abuser, you have to learn how to maneuver around the abuser until you can get the time, the effort, the finances to get a safe place for you and your children. Because there are a lot of times people say, oh, he's terrible. You know, he beats her and she just stays. What's wrong with her? Why doesn't she get out? It's not that easy. And that's why the topic needs to be discussed. Because we need to help people. Not everybody wants to get help, but they have to know that it's there. And another way to help them is to help them build themselves back up to their independence, to liking themselves, and most of all, to loving themselves. So while we are going to talk a little bit about domestic violence, we're going to talk about how do we survive to continue our lives and maybe find someone who's going to know our love language or just maybe live a better quality of life without going through all the trauma. And universe has just kind of pushed all of this my way, and I welcome it because I think it's a topic, or I believe it's a topic that comes back to how much do we love ourselves? And what does that look like when we're caught up in situations like this? So let me see. What else are we saying here? Mac, I like the things that you're saying. So with that, this is who I am. And I am hopeful that we can get a conversation volleying here about what we do. Now, listen, when you talk about domestic violence, a lot of people don't want to admit it. It's a shameful topic. It's a shameful situation to be in. That's what you're taught. That's what you're told to believe. But it's not. It's a topic that should never stay silent. Now we're seeing a lot more women losing their lives to domestic violence, but we're also seeing children losing their lives to domestic violence. And this is where we have to honestly stop and find a way to let these women know that self love is honestly the way out. But you have to have a three-dimensional plan. And how do we do that? Where are the resources? How do we make the moves that we need to make to allow us to live better? That is what this subject is all about. We all talk about the horrors of domestic violence, but once they're out, how do we help them back in society? How do we become the mirror to our abusers to the point where their mask falls off? Because remember, in public, they look wonderful, but in private, they are the devil incarnate. So, what does that look like for women and children moving forward, healthy, happy, and knowing that they're loved and that they love themselves enough to choose themselves and to stop choosing their abuser. So that is how I got involved in the domestic violence game. Is that good, Emmy? Annie?
So that's amazing. And you haven't even told them about the other things you do. You've been a herbalist, been a spiritualist. And I say, but and I say, when I say you're going to talk as long as I did about what you do, I was deadly serious, right? You do important things. Let's welcome some more people. I see Yolanda, as I mentioned earlier. Her book is coming. LinkedIn user, I think. Who do I think that is? I had an idea just now. I think it's Alison. So Alison got her books out as well. Natalie, welcome. Natalie Thomas, glad you're here. Always appreciate your help with the comments, Natalie. Thank you so much. Many more lovely people. Where are we? So let's welcome people now. I'll come back to the comments in good time. Simi, I see you. Welcome. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate you every time you join us. I know your time is valuable. And Dr. CJ. Hi, Dr. CJ. This is great, Dr. Yvonne. I love what you do for our community. Yeah, no, for sure. It's a big topic, right? And so people don't want to talk about this topic, but I think we have to talk about it, right? It's a problem. It's a real problem.
Yes.
Because the weirdism. The
What's that?
weirdism. I said the weirdism for me is that this problem has been in humanity almost forever. This domestic violence, men being more powerful than women, men using that physical strength to their advantage. And I guess some people are just angry. The numbers are stark, Dr. Yvonne. The numbers are astonishing. So 1 in 4 women would have experienced domestic violence after the age of 16. 1 in 4. That's ridiculous, right? That's ridiculous.
The other thing you have to remember too, Annie, is domestic violence is now starting at a much earlier age. It's starting in dating, in college and high school. This is where the problems really started affecting me, because you're no longer seeing it just in couples that are cohabitating. You're seeing it in the younger people, which is why we have to get out there. We have to educate people. And then we have to let the girls know that that's not love. And see, they were grooming us. That's how I feel, because why were why were girls the only ones that had to go with our parents, our mother? Because the men never went. It was only the girls, the mothers with the food, and then the girls following behind them. And then we would be witness to seeing, the aftermath of those fights. So now that domestic violence is getting into the younger generation, high school and college, and this is when it's a precarious time of development for those ages. And these young girls hide it. But see, if we're astute as parents or as teachers or anyone that interacts with these younger people, if we're astute, we can identify the signals of domestic violence. And it might not be at home, like I said. It might be at school. It might be with friends. And remember, it's not always male against female or female against male. The domestic violence can come from the mother to the child, or from the grandparents to the child, or from the grandparents. I've seen grown mothers that are mothers themselves still being abused by their mothers, who are the children's grandmothers. So it becomes something that is inherent in their family. So yes, that's true. Go ahead,
I,
Evan.
I love the fact you mentioned it's not just men on women, right? You know, I think many of us are aware of men, you know, men, like I said, the physical strength differences is what it is, you know, and but there's also domestic violence between men and men. And some, you know, look, I got a couple of friends when I was growing up, you know, and you know, they live above me in the flat above me, right? And they would always fight from the day they started the relationship. They would always fight. I mean, real fights, breaking stuff, throwing stuff. You see, but now one day I got between them because you know, they were both my friends, right? I played football with him. She was my long term friend. You know what I got, Dr. Yvonne? I got a fork stuck up my ass because one of them stabbed me with a fork. Right.
Yes.
Okay, so of course, we all thought they're gonna split up one day. They're gonna realize that this is toxic. And they had kids, by the way. They're having kids at the same time as all this is going on. And I went to go and see them 2 months ago when I went to London, right? And they're still together. I'm talking, what, 30 years, and they're still together. And so I'm looking at them going, how are you still together? What's changed? And he said, it was never me, it was her. She was a crazy one. I just trying to defend myself. It didn't look like it. I'm saying, right, it's, you know, it's weird. You know, and I guess it tells me that our simple our simple solutions. Why don't you just leave? You know, why don't you two get yourself sorted? You know, why don't you stop? Just stop. There's a lot more to it than what meets the eye, is the point I'm trying to make, right? There's a lot more to it.
Mm.
You know, look, Cyrus, I see what you say. Educating both our sons and daughters is perhaps better because abuse can come from both sons and our daughters. I agree, and I agree entirely, Cyrus. You know, it is from, you know, it's a disease. It's a real problem in humanity. You know, and you mentioned that, as Max said, that we've got daughters. I've got sisters. I've got a wife. I've got sisters. I got daughters, granddaughters. I got a mother.
But see, this is part of the domestic violence picture too.
Mm,
The men or the abuser. I really hate always saying men because it really, I focus on the female part because I'm female, obviously. And I focus on the children, you know. But men do get abused too. So let's just say the abuser,
yeah.
right? Um, the abuser isn't settled in their mind unless they're dominating
Mm,
a subject.
mm,
But when you start to show them, hold up the reflection of them, call them out. Now, there's some people you just can't do that to, and you just have to figure out a way to get away safely. But to those that have some kind of reasoning, and maybe it's a substance that leads to the abuse. So
mm,
maybe they need to stop drinking, or maybe they're doing some kind of drug or something, and maybe they need to get help for that. Not all cases of DV is caused by just a personality trait.
mm,
A
mm,
lot is caused by alcohol, and I believe that that was the biggest cause that I saw growing up. Because it always only happened on the weekends. That was when it would happen. So it would happen either on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Then come Sunday, we're all walking there with food.
mm,
Now, there were two couples that I remember, loved them, right? Because we had a really tight knit Caribbean community when I was growing up. But he turned her into an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic, and he was very abusive. So it would start from, let's say, Friday night, because he was a working alcoholic. He had the same job for over 40 years, retired from that position. And he was an Avon executive, believe it or not, because we have Avon out here,
Mm.
one of the manufacturing plants. And so he was a functioning alcoholic that was also a domestic abuser. And he abused his wife and his son. And he, the daughter, because, they always have a scapegoat as well. And that's the same thing with narcissism, which our next conversation, hopefully you guys will join, is going to be on narcissism, because that's a big part of domestic violence. It's
Mm.
huge. And that is when I woke up in 2017, because I realized I had accepted narcissism since I was a child. And it was inherent in our culture. Inherent. And it's one thing having one narcissistic parent, but it's a whole nother dimension having two and a sibling. It's and you don't know what it is, because it's become your normal, until you realize there's nothing normal about these behaviors.
Mm.
So, how do I deal with it? What do I do? You have to get your strength back. You have to call your energy back to you. You have to control who is in your sphere. Who are you allowing in your sphere? And how much do you love yourself? What do you look like? Are you taking time out of the day to really give yourself some love? Do you have a routine going on? And that
Mm.
routine, when the abuser starts seeing that you're actually choosing yourself, the mirror that you are now holding up to them is not a mirror of let me walk on eggshells, let me make sure that everybody else is fine first, let me make sure his clothes are pressed or his food or this or that.
Mm.
Whatever it is that makes him feel comfortable, that you now are basically his slave, you take that away and you turn
True.
that energy on yourself.
Mm.
You start going inward. And that was where I started in 2017. Um, and it was also my spiritual awakening. So, yes, and you're right, I'm a spiritualist. I was raised a Catholic and realized um, very fast in my 20s that I don't want a church or a person telling me how I should live my life.
Mm.
Also, I was doing some weird stuff and I didn't know where I was getting it from. Now I realize it's innate and I'm spiritually based. So everything I do is holistic. Hence the herbs, how I feed my family, how I prepare our meals, the different teas we drink. And finally, I had a business client whose mother had flatlined 3 times.
Mm.
And they were, they knew my practices because I am consistent. And she came to me and she said, please help, because my mother has no functioning kidneys. She's a diabetic, high blood pressure. They eventually amputated one of her legs and some other things. And then she flatlined 3 times. And on the third time, she came to me, and I didn't know how to price. I didn't know what to say. I said, well, these are the things I do for my family. And she said, we've been watching you. We watch what you say online. We see how you teach people to cook. And we want you to help us. Um, that's how I started doing what I do now. So I move more out of the business aspect of my consulting firm and more into the life coaching side of my consulting firm. And it just happens that right now, in writing this book or beginning this project, um, I don't want to concentrate on the actual topic
Mm,
of the abuse as much as I want to concentrate on what we do once we identify, all right, we want out of this. What are our remedies? And how do we make our lives better? That is the concentration because everybody knows domestic violence exists.
mm,
But what do we do to get that person back? How do we call back that energy? How do we call it back, own it, and live a soft life as we were intended to live?
mm. I
So,
agree with you.
yeah,
No, I agree with you. You know, I mean, it's so multifaceted. So let's go through some more comments. I'll get to you. So, welcome, Jay. And I said, Mac, I agree with you. You know, it's like racism. It's nice. It is cross cultural abuse. You know, I remember saying to my son the other day, there's something in our culture that makes us more prone to be that person that we don't want to be. And he said, no, 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 Dad. My son's mixed, and of course, not understanding that. And he said, no, Dad, no, 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 no. Everyone does it as bad as each other. I'm like, no, we have a genuine problem. You know, we have to address the issue. And, you know, of course, I know it sounds like racism when we say that, Mac, but it's not. You know, there's something, Dr. Yvonne, right? There is something there in, you know, so I don't know, whether it's Africans, Afro-Caribbeans, you know, there's something there somewhere. I don't know. I don't know whether we're more angry. And I say again, some me person. I don't know whether, you know, we're more angry as a people. I don't know whether we're more helpless. I don't know what it is. So what do you think it is? And I'll come to
I
you, Mom.
I believe that, all right, this is gonna sound a little racist. Um, but uh so I'm both, right? I'm Afro Hispanic, which is so ridiculous to me because in Jamaica we don't do all that crap, you know, this mixture and this crap. We're just Jamaican people. Um, but I feel that it has something to do with colonization because as a people, we're peaceful. As black people were painted barbaric because the colonists uh, are stealing from us and taking from us, and they're living this life that they don't feel other people should have, but yet they take it. And I think the colonization, you know, the torture, the beatings, the way they treated our women, um, the subhumanness of it all. And I really believe that's what it is. Uh, as far as now or presently. Um, because if you look at just if you leave people alone, the way they live within their culture, I don't think you really have it where they're just going to be beating each other up. But if we're talking of a specific group, our group, I think it has a lot to do with that. The other groups, and I would probably say the Caucasian groups, um, because I look at the Hispanics the same way, um, the Asians the same way. I look at people of color the same way, because most people of color, when they're raising their children, manners is a big deal to them. Manners, how they address their adults, it's a big deal to them. And corporal punishment is a huge part of that. Whereas I believe in the Caucasian uh, view of things, you do have people that are very violent, that don't want women to have any right at all. Whereas in the majority of the other cultures, women have been ruling forever.
Mm.
And they understand what the feminine energy is all about. So I don't know that that's what it is, but just speaking from my own experience, that's what I think. Because every race, like I said, this does not discriminate. Domestic violence does not discriminate. But if you're saying, okay, we're a subculture of the human culture, of the human race, why do you think that is? I think in our culture, that's what it is. Keeping
Yeah.
people in line, um, using corporal punishment to make a point instead of their words.
Mm.
And I think we've just gotten used to that. And it is not something that we should have ever gotten used to.
I agree. I agree with you. I think it does likely start with that corporal punishment that some people think is right. But I will say, and I say every time, when you choose to beat your children, all we do is create children who are hurt, who are abused, who then become abusers themselves, right? Hurt people. I'm saying all that now that there's something there, and we have to start somewhere. And I think, I guess, look, there's so many parts to this. Now, let's talk to Michael. Let's see what Michael's take on the conversation of the topic is. Are you there, Michael? Michael? Oh, Michael. Okay, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, you're there. How you doing?
I'm not bad. I haven't
Now,
fallen
talk
off the
louder. Talk
stage.
louder. Talk louder.
Wait a minute. I haven't fallen off the stage yet, so I'm pretty
No,
good.
no, you're still here. You're still on stage, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. So, I've got a couple of questions. There, and I'll come back to some of my thoughts that I've been having with respect to some of the other subject details that you have mentioned, Dr. Yvonne. There's been a long period between when you recognized that this was a problem when you were 11 and now to the point where you are now, or even to the point where you started realizing, I mean, it started affecting you physically and also mentally as well, to a point that you were, I think, getting sick, manifesting, sickness. In your perspective, has there been any progress in identifying and redirecting um, domestic violence situations at all, from your perspective?
When when you say redirecting, I don't know. Can you clarify that for me, Michael?
Yes. Um, in other words, has there been any progress with respect to domestic violence? You indicated that it's gotten worse. Has there been a smidgen of progress anywhere in the world with respect to identifying and, kind of like what you're in the business of, redirecting this the domestic violence situations, like getting
Yes.
people? Mhm.
Yes, there's been a lot of progress. Believe it or not, there's been a lot of progress. So, in the 80s, I don't know if you guys remember a movie called The Burning Bed with Farrah Fawcett.
That's new to me.
Yeah, Farrah Fawcett made a movie in the late 1980s called Burning Bed. It was a true story. I'm gonna get off camera, guys, because I'm driving. I'm sorry. My appointment ran late, but anyway, I'll keep talking. Farrah Fawcett made a movie called Burning Bed in the late 80s. It was based on real life tragedy of a wife that was caught up in this cycle, and she didn't have any money. They were poor, uh, but the husband worked. He wouldn't let her work, and he was just abusive, period. Right? I mean, all she had to do was walk in the room and he'd start beating her in front of the kids. And like I said, based on a true story, she eventually tried everything to get away. Every time she got away, there was really nowhere for her to go, because back in the 80s, guys, there were no shelters. All right, back in the 80s there were no shelters. And um she would run to someone's house or the other. He'd come, he'd get her back home, beat her up again, and it was just a cycle till finally she landed in the hospital with broken bones. After she was released from the hospital, the beatings continued until one day he fell asleep and she burned him in his bed. When that happened, courts started to take a look at it, all right? Because the the fatalities started to be men and women, because women started to say, you know what, I'm tired and I'm going to defend myself and I'm going to defend my children. And even though they did not want to commit murder, they were committing murder because they knew if they didn't, the husband was going to. Now, when that started happening, all of a sudden the laws started to say, well, instead of first degree murder, we'll go with manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter. But either way, the children lost both parents for a period of time. If one died, of course, that person was gone, but the other one would be incarcerated. All right. Then there was an incident with a um, Republican senator from Texas, and he was very well known. You could look it up. And that was I believe it was in 1987 or 86. And he was known by friends, family, and even the people that he served with in the Senate. He was an abuser, but the abuse was really bad. Like, he put his wife in the hospital several times. One night he decided, okay, I want my kids out of the house and I want my live-in maid out of the house. And you're going to stay in the house with me by myself. The maid did not feel good about it because she only went home on the weekends. Something told her to go back. He was trying to kill his wife that night. And the maid got her out of the house, and the only shelter close to Austin, Texas at the time was something like 6.5 hours away. And that is when, believe it or not, things started to change. And we finally had a law passed that stated that if a woman or a person had proof of domestic violence and they were in fear of their life, they were being battered. And that was the battery law for domestic violence. And less women who ended up murdering their spouses went to jail. Instead, they had to go through therapy and all that kind of stuff. So yes, there's been some, leaps made, because now we have more facilities, we have more social services, and we have more people that are beginning to understand that it's not okay. It's not okay. But in this society right now, with everything that's going on, believe it or not, after COVID, domestic violence peaked. There were so many cases of domestic violence during COVID, it was crazy, and a lot of deaths. Um, that didn't help us, but at least now we have more facilities and we have more services. So yes, Michael, go ahead.
You did say that there was a catalyst, especially when it came to domestic violence within the family or even outside of it. The catalyst was something that is being used to drive as a means to get into a stage or position in order to commit these abuses. That could be drugs, that could be alcohol, that could be anything that can be used as a catalyst to get into that condition. And you said that it is because the abuser wants to have control over the other person for some reason or another, or manifest some sort of, type of control. To the extent that they are deliberately taking, probably deliberate, yeah, I should say deliberately taking these toxins or drugs, and then letting loose after the fact because now they feel a little bit more comfortable in order to be able to do that. Putting them, in other words, putting them in a psychological state that allows them to do that. So, which means that these abuses are kind of like premeditated. Premeditated. They're not. It just doesn't seem like as if they're not. I'm wondering if you have had that kind of thought
There's
in
some
your line
people,
of work.
Michael. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, continue.
No, there's some people that it is premeditated because all they want to do is beat somebody up. Now, remember, and Annie was right. This this is a illness. This is an illness because you have some people, like literally, that just look at their significant other or their children and just go at it. And I don't know if you want to call it premeditated. It's just part of their behavior. That anger is part of their behavior. Now, is there a catalyst? Yeah, sometimes. In most of the cases I saw, most of those people have been drinking. It was a weekend, and they were mean drunks. You know, but it doesn't
Could
always have to be the case. No, it
you
could
consider
be
it as generational trauma? In other
yes,
words, they saw their fathers doing it, and so they consumed it. They picked it up. It became part of their genetics, and then they passed it on to their kids also.
yes, and that's why when women decide, okay, I love myself more than I love this man or this person that consistently hurts me, when you see that and you see your mother or that person being abused finally take control and say, this is no more, they take that stand, the children can see, I have always known that hurting my mom is not good or hurting me is not good. Let me be that change. And that's all this is about, being that change. Because, remember something, DNA is really fascinating, right? But do you know that people can say, all right, You have high blood pressure, right? I like how they do this prep. Um, you have high blood pressure. Uh, Tell me, does your mother have high blood pressure? Does your father have high blood pressure? You know, and they go down your family history. Do you know if you change your eating habits from what your parents did or whatever they did, right, to spur that high blood pressure? Do you know in one generation you can be the change to where your offspring don't have to worry about that as being part of their medical family history? Well, the same thing is possible in behavioral issues. If you decide that you want to be that change as a child, it stops with you. And when I was 11 years old, it stopped with me. And if I told you what I did, which, read the book, um, you would be shocked that an 11-year-old girl would do that, you know, to a 275-pound Cuban father. I
Wow.
literally just had enough. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
I suppose I should get the book then.
Well, when it comes out, yeah.
Let us write it and publish it first, Michael. Of course, no, look, it's an invitation for
It
anyone
is a
who goes.
yeah, it's definitely an invitation. Oh my gosh.
If you have a story to tell, we would love to have your story in the book. That's the point. So of course, this is not the sort of book where we're going to struggle to get people who's got stories to tell. So now, Dr. Yvonne said that you'd be amazed the people that are interested in telling a story in the book, Michael. Yeah, Dr. Yvonne mentioned senators, people in positions of power, you know, all over the world. And I'm saying that this is a disease that affects so many. It's ridiculous. Let's talk to Tracy quickly. I don't want to lose Tracy or Dr. Leah. So my two amazing friends. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll come back to you, Michael. There's also some amazing comments to go through, so I'm excited. Tracy, talk to us. How are you doing?
I'm good. Hello, Annie. Hello, everyone. I'm just to come here to support you. I know you're doing this again. I saw you yesterday. Thank you so much, Annie. It is pretty sad to look at the numbers. I actually looked up very quickly to see the statistics. That's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men at some point of their life experience some domestic violence. This is violence, not just abuse alone, it's physical contact violence. That's really shocking to me. I was thinking maybe 15-20%, but this is much more. And good thing is when I search, the first thing pumped up is the national hotline. But while I was listening to Yvonne and Michael talking, I actually, I'm very curious about how those hotlines actually work. I dialed number and put me on hold. And that's not good, right? If somebody wants to get immediate help, the help is not available. And we need more people working on that. Thank you, Annie.
And those the services out there, some can be shocking, of course. But here's the issue I see. I wonder what Dr. Yvonne thinks, right? The issue I see is like all services, social services, call it that, right? They're overstretched, Tracy. They are underfunded, over needed. It's all of that, right? It's hard for them to keep the immediate response, given the level of need that there is for the services, right? And that's a shocker, if you ask me.
Well, let me say this. Those are just, and thank you so much for doing the research. Um, those are just the cases that we know about. So it's even less than that.
Mm.
When I started um, crisis intervention in undergrad a million years ago, I saw the people, the women, that were some professors at the college I was at. I I think the biggest shock was the pastor's wife. Um, so all the college students that were going to, this church in Southern Illinois, when I was in college, all of us would basically go to one church because, Southern Illinois, I mean, doesn't have much, right? And so we would go to this one church, and this pastor seemed to be like, like the man. But every now and then, the wife wouldn't be at church. The kids would be there, but the wife wouldn't be there. So one Sunday, no, I think it was Saturday, I was on duty. It was actually my first real day being at the desk at the center or the house. And the person they let in the door, and I got to tell you, it was a really bloody scene, which was really hard, was the pastor's wife.
Wow.
And that was the first person that I helped in that role at that time. That was the first person. And I realized then that it's not just the people in the circles that I know, right? Or it's not just people that are poor or whatever, And I was shocked, but it was a pastor's wife, and her children were covered in blood. And I'm going to tell you something. If you think that those statistics are shocking, don't look at the death rate, especially in Canada. Don't look at that. And here's the other thing. Yeah, we have these services, but I live in Illinois, and I live in Lake County, Illinois. All right. And there's a shelter here, and they have all these galas and all of this stuff, and all of the hoity-toity stuff, right? But when you try to say, I have clothes for these women, because they try to get back out there, and they have to go on job interviews. So one of the programs I wrote was helping them revamp their resumes, getting them to look better, take an interest in loving themselves and all of that. And believe it or not, it doesn't even come close. And these people here, they literally discriminate. Even on getting the help for the women in the center. It's all about, oh, this friend and that friend. What about the women that really need the help? It's not a private club. It is a problem. And so even in that, we still need a lot of help.
Yeah, yeah. It's a real issue. So it's a real problem. Let's do some of the comments. Oh, okay. I think we lost Dr. Leah. Hopefully she'll come back. So, so Mac, I see your comments, and I says this is a very sensitive situation. We have to also be aware that intervention can often lead to escalation of abuse when we think we're helping. And they say the most dangerous time is when the other person the abused person is thinking of leaving, right? that is the harsh reality. So Max says, the abuse I saw growing up in families and friends is the main reason I don't drink unless at social events. And even then, minimal due to seeing how alcohol can lead to horrible physical abuse. But, so Michael was talking about the potential causes or triggers. And that's probably a better word for it. Yeah. Welcome, Jay. Jay says, our storytelling strategist. Jay says, when someone says they're only a social drinker, but somehow everything is a social event, the irony, Jay, right? The irony. It's, when Dr. Yvonne calls it a cancer, I think it really is a cancer. It is a cancer. It's an illness that. No, is it? No, Michael said it's a generational thing. No, but I think we have to break the cycle somewhere. I think that's one of the things Dr. Yvonne and I are determined to start doing. Right, we need to break the chain somewhere. We can't just carry on as if this is in any way or form okay. It's not okay, right? Now, but so everyone struggles to deal with this. Everyone, the government can't deal with it. Our health departments, our health authorities can't deal with it. The police can't deal with it. This is what makes it so challenging. How do we move from where we are to somewhere better? Yes, Michael, of course. The stats sometimes look better every year, but it might go down by 0.5%. But as Dr. Yvonne said, at least one person dies every week, if not two in the UK, I think. The US is a bigger country. I imagine your figure is probably higher, much higher. It is a clear and present danger to people's lives. And also, Dr. Yvonne mentioned the kids that do get ruined, right? Max says, when you fill in a doctor's form here in the UK, it astonishes me that they ask how many units a day do you consume. I never see the option that fits for me 1 to 2 units a month. Well, I suppose 1 to 2 units a month, Mac, means that they'll take it as that's fine. There's no issue. You're not a drunk in their eyes, right? So and that's they say. Yes, social cultures from region to region and nation to nation are very diverse. They are, So, finding a solution that covers everything, finding strategies that covers everything. I guess that's the challenge that we have in front of us, right? And thankfully, so Dr. Yvonne has strategies. Which is mentioned this self-love as being this is the key. This is what empowers people to do what they have to do. Whether it's save themselves, save their family. Without that self-love, we're kind of stuck, right? Let me stop talking for a second. Dr. Yvonne, welcome Lisa. Welcome, Lisa, superstar Lisa. So, our menopause specialist, glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Yvonne, let me come back to you. What's your take on the comments so far? Or where do you want to take the conversation to next?
I'm reading them as I'm trying. I stopped. When I stop, I read them. But what's interesting to me is I see mostly men talking, which is really good. Because I hate just saying that it's women. I keep on saying that because I do know that this happens with men too. But men don't normally get involved in this conversation. Men don't normally get involved. And I think it's kind of like a taboo for men to talk about it. I don't think they're not comfortable. This subject totally is not comfortable. And usually it's discussed in women's groups, unless the man gets in a group of abusers and it's court ordered or something like that. So I'm really happy to see the men getting involved in this conversation, because even that shows me that there's a change. Used to be a time whenever this subject would come up, men would wave it on. You know, a lot of times it was part of the good old boy network. We'll just use that phrase for right now. But having men in the conversation, that's going to start to heal more than I think anyone even realizes. Because when I identified that I was actually living with a narcissist, a severe narcissist, and you know, I've been married forever, over 25 years, and we have 3 children together, and we were able to build, you know, a pretty productive life, a nice life actually. But it came at a high expense. I felt like a married single mother. And it wasn't that my spouse went out and all that kind of stuff. No, he was there, but he wasn't mentally present. And when you're not mentally present, your heart is not present. And if your heart is not present and your mind is not present, then basically what we see is a carcass that's there, but there's no feeling, there's no love language, there's no nurturing, there's nothing. Because the thing about narcissists is they rarely have feelings, and so the behavior, the mental abuse that goes on, they don't even see it. Now, they have traits, and that was how I was able to cope. But before I could identify what I was going through all those years, it manifested itself in an illness. And I am not a sickly person. I'll give you a little background. I was a dancer. I was a classically trained dancer, ballet, modern, and jazz. I was an athlete, Junior Olympics for over 12 years, and very, very active. Never been sick. Magnificent specimen of a body, I will say, because I worked out literally every day. And I was brought down to a very unattractive weight. I didn't present unattractively, but I was unattractive to myself. Okay? My whole me, my persona was completely broken down. So I went from a person that could not be stopped to a person that I believe was a shell of who I was. And I'm a dynamo. Now, when saying that, I'm not a shrinking violet. It's not like I sat there and just took it and took it. But after a while, your body just can't take that amount of stress and pressure. It's just too much. And I paid with my health. I paid with my health. So I woke up one morning. It was Christmas Eve. My children were 11, 9, and 4. And there were growths around my left leg and on my right hand out of nowhere. Ended up not being able to walk. I was bedridden for 6 years. And then started, that whole rehabilitation thing. And mind you, while I am in that state, I was still working. I still found ways to support my children, because I teach, um, I make products, I build homes, I build commercial buildings. My background goes way back. Uh, and I'm blessed. And actually, that's not a good word to use because I just found out what that really means. But I was able to survive, but it was painful. There were days that the pain would wake me up. I would see my bones twisting in my hand. And all of that was a manifestation of all those years of just trying to cope. But no one on the outside knew that because I don't present that way. I'm a very strong person. But there comes a time when you have to say, I love myself more than anything else. And I want to live. And finally, I got my last surgery last year. But the journey from 2009 to now is why I'm doing this. It was a calling on my life, I believe, to do this. I am the change that not only my prospective family uh, needs to see, but I believe I can also help lead that change in my own little way. But it has to start with self-love. Because you see, I had to make that decision because I am truly a mother. I have always been a mother, inherently so. And I just did not understand putting myself first. Never did, never thought I would ever do it because I was supposed to be taking care of everything else. And that's the problem with women. We are always taking care of everybody else. So my luxury lifestyle coaching now is holistic. But we do look at the premise of, being in a relationship for years upon years upon years, and there being many features or even no features of narcissism. But how do we get back to ourselves? That's why I look at it holistically. That is why I do the things I do now. But my journey of this whole thing, this whole domestic violence, now I never had issues with the hitting because I would have killed him. Literally, I'm just going to be honest. I'm not the one you want to do, no. But narcissism can be so subtle that when you finally realize that you're on the other end of the scope, that you're now questioning yourself, you're now looking for somebody else to tell you that, you're good. You're waiting to hear, well, did it taste good? Did it taste good? You know, and I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Those are all traits of an abused person. And when you step back and you realize, oh, well, there were never any hands laid on me, but man, mentally, I am screwed up. That's when you say, you know what? I think I'll call Dr. Yvonne and see how she did it because she's handling her shit now. And I was always handling my business. I just wasn't handling myself, if that makes sense. I wasn't loving myself enough.
It makes perfect sense. Of course, it makes perfect sense. So Mac, thank you for another great comment. I think this abuse is very prevalent in different cultures. In many white communities, also this is also a problem. Like the Dutch settled in South Africa, where women were taught to be very subservient. And it sounds like it's like a very harrowing picture, Mac. So, but I think we have to agree. It's in every society, it's in every age group, it's in every type of relationships. Every different combo you can find. It is an issue, right? Natalie says the most decisive and sustainable method to address this abuse is to address yourself. That's how you send up to Yvonne. Before addressing others. Enabling beliefs and habits allow the perpetual cycle of abuse and trauma, which, as we know, feeds into intergenerational trauma that can take centuries to unlearn and move forward from. So, welcome, Mike. Great to see you always. Mike says it's colonization of the mind and stretches across cultures and economic strata. Subservience is a state of mind driven from a mindset of scarcity or perceived lack of choice. Changing from the mindset of victim to victor is key. What say you, Dr. Yvonne? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned colonialism as being part of our problem, right?
Well, yeah, I do. But it really in the long and the short of it all, a lot really does depend on, or I think all of it depends on what where we are mentally. You know, what is that saying? So a man thinketh, so is he. I think that's the saying. Um, we have to get a strong mind. Our mindset is what moves you. It's what finally says to you, hey, I've got to change the way I think about myself. I've got to change the way I feel about myself. I've got to change the way I treat myself. And I have to know that I want to live a certain way. Mindset is everything, because even in abuse, it is a mindset.
I agree. I agree.
You can't go anywhere successfully if you don't know where you're going. Does that make sense? You know,
Yeah, for sure.
how are you going to go? How are you going to get from point A to point B if you don't know where you're going? The other thing is, how are you going to get from point A to point B if you're not truthful with yourself? See, that's the other big thing, is admitting that I have work to do. I have work to do. And what does that work look like? See, sometimes people don't want to invest not only time, but energy and finances into changing the narrative. In order to grow, you have to change, right?
I agree.
They call it evolution, right? Well, how are you going to change if you're not open to learning? If you're not open to admitting, you have some of these women that live these beautiful posh lives, and they don't want to give up that black Amex. They don't want to give it up. But then you have women like Jeff Bezos' wife. I admire her. All right. I admire that woman because it wasn't money that kept her. She didn't put up with the narcissistic abuse after she found out about the cheating, because that's the other thing narcissists do, is they cheat, because they always have to have a new supply. And since they know you're not going anywhere, they'll tickle their fancy until they're done with that person. And then, they come back to you for a minute. Then they'll come back and they'll start being mean and stuff all over again, which means that they've spotted another victim. But when you decide in your mind that you know who that person is, and you start looking for their clues. See, because before you're just thinking, oh, this person is mean, why are they so mean to me? But you're not looking at the cues. First, it might be where they just start ignoring you. Second, it might be everything you do is just not right. Third, it might be them, oh, I'm working late, and then, you don't see them, for whatever. You have to look at the cues, because then that's how you know they've spotted a new victim, and they're going to start taking that shit out on you again. So the way to conquer them is to be that mirror, not the mirror that they want to see. They want to see you angry. They want to see you hurt. They want to see you crying. They want to see that power that they have over you. I'm talking about the mirror saying, "Oh, okay, so you you're scoping somebody else out, because I know that when you start acting like this is the stage you're in, and I know that when you start doing this is the stage you're in, and oh, so you found somebody, so now there's the love bombing." That's the stage you were in. See, knowledge is power. Don't let anyone tell you knowledge is power. And don't let anyone ever tell you that you can't fix this situation, especially with a narcissist. The eventually, hopefully you'll leave, you'll find your true love. Hopefully, because everybody has a true love. Everybody does. But how and when you find them, you don't know. But the one thing you do know is what you don't want. Does that answer the question? I hope it does.
Well, it's certainly useful. It's useful addition to the conversation. Thank you so much. Let's know. There are many more comments to go through. I'm trying to work out how to play your song, Mike. So Max says, I grew up in a corporal punishment school system where we had to choose between a cricket bat, cane, or one of the many other options. Sounds horrific. When I was a kid, Mac, I think we had to go and we had to prepare our own cane when I was at school in Nigeria. Given I left Nigeria at 13, I'm saying we had to basically find the right bit of cane that will please the teacher, when which teacher it was, and then we had to strip it and then prepare it, and dry it, and just also just craziness. It's strange how mean the world is, Mac. That's what I take, right? So Mike says, we're all around the same age. Mike probably been a bit ahead of us, but Mike says, I remember that is a disaster. That's that's a problem, right? I agree with you, Mike. Find your clarity within. That's what we must find. That's what everyone's saying. It is inside us, and it's only when we decide to use our self-love as our armor, really, and our vehicle to escape our situation, to do something different, to not put up with abuse, that things really begin to change. So as you say, Mike, that's narcissistic behavior continues because it's allowed to. That's what I'm trying to say in many wrong words, Mike. But I agree with you entirely. It's when we give in. It's when we become the victim, not just play victim, to become the victim in our minds and physically, that we're in trouble. I think what we do in the face of the behavior is key. Yeah, I said, now you're taking the words out of my mouth, Mike. Victim of victim versus victim. That is the real. That is where it's at, right? So be the change you want to see in others every day. You never know what the impact you can have on another. So that's another big topic, Mike. I think how do we support people with people in these situations. I say, saying to them, split up, go your separate ways. It's not always the best way. I found that out from experience. Michael, you've been quiet for a long time. Yeah, what is your I don't think you shared your thoughts on on narcissism and domestic abuse when you spoke last time. You asked a couple of questions, and I said, well, what are your thoughts? What can we learn from your insights, my friend?
It's pretty much in line with um, what you and Dr. Yvonne have been.
Come nearer to your device, Michael.
I am already. Sorry.
Yay!
Can you hear me now? It's
Yes,
better.
that's perfectly, much better.
It's in line with what you and Dr. Yvonne have been talking about. This is definitely a very extremely uh, a subject that really touches the heart. It's difficult to talk about. And I applaud Dr. Yvonne to come out and actually have the strength to voice it. Um, and as she indicated, to have more men talking about it because we're the progenitors of narcissism. And so, as long as we talk about it, and as long as we identify it amongst ourselves and know that it is something that we need to curb, a lot more of us will actually be doing it internally, and then it will manifest externally. But the conversation has to start amongst ourselves. The fact is that we're not talking about it. We're not even within the family. You don't even go out and talk outside of the family about the situation that just happened to your mom. You just talk amongst each other as siblings. Did you see what happened last night? Oh my gosh, it was terrible. What was that all about? Oh, I don't know. But mom was in terrible shape. She came into my room. I had to offer her sanctuary. Like shit. Dad slept alone in his bed and now mom is in our bed. Yeah. And she was in terrible condition, crying and everything. And I just did not know what to do. So the kids are going through this. And even you as children, you just don't know what to say. You don't even know how to talk to other families that are going through this or other kids that are going through this. Why? Because you don't want them thinking, oh, your mom is weak or your dad is weak, is terrible. That kind of thought, it's just negative, completely and utterly negative. And yet, it's so necessary for us as men, leaders, to understand this affects the family, it affects society, it affects how we move on in life, and it even affects our own lives and the universe we're trying to create. I mean, what on earth are we trying to do? Are we trying to be demons? Is that what we want to portray ourselves as in front of those who we quote and unquote say we love? If you don't love the woman, then don't be with her. Go find someone else. But genuinely live correctly, not incorrectly. For God's sake. Keep on
My,
saying, asking people to man up. Mm. What the heck does manning up mean? I ask you that because because what we're talking about and what Dr. Yvonne has identified, I don't like the connotation. What does man up really mean? We really have to evaluate that internally and externally and do it quick. Like a week ago, this should have been done. Sorry. Any,
I,
I am not in a very good mood right now. Anyway,
I can
thanks.
hear the frustration for sure. Look, I think I'll take one big thing from what you say, which resonates with me. I remember having a fight, maybe my only fight with a girlfriend. I'm probably 17, and after the fight, I thought, if I ever have to fight with a woman, she's not the right woman. I will leave, and I always have done. I've never touched another woman physically in terms of having a fight. He said, "I leave, Michael." I think that's a great advice. You know, it's in, you know, if you are fighting the people you say you love physically, whether that's your kids or your wife or your girlfriend, there's nothing there. There's no love there. That's just a delusion. So I agree with you entirely. You know, I tend
You
to
know,
literally
that
walk.
reminds me of something that actually happened to me. I fought, and the cops were called in, and the cops' advice was just leave. What you doing? Just leave. For both of us, just leave it. Leave each other. That was the advice. And frankly, now it dawns on me that that was the best advice ever. Because, like you said, if we're at that stage where we're actually doing that, yeah, it means that it's not gonna work. You're gonna have to leave. There's You bring out the demons inside of each other. And when you're doing that, bringing out the demons, it means that it's not gonna work. Period.
Okay.
There's that quote that's saying that someone is not at your level if you bring out the demons in them.
Well, your vibration, you know, you guys are not on the, you guys might have gotten together. When you got together, you guys might have been on the same vibration, right? But as time passed and masks started to slip and true self started to come out, and one started their elevation, um, and the other one didn't, or one is going through dark night of the soul, and the other one is disconnected spiritually, then one, starts to elevate, and the other one is still at that vibration. Remember, we attract what we are, but we also, as we elevate, we also attract what we don't want. And sometimes the universe might get it wrong, because the universe only goes by, when you're manifesting, it goes by what is predominantly on your mind, what is predominantly in your spirit, what is predominantly in your heart. That's all the universe goes for. So the universe doesn't know if it's good or bad or whatever, just knows that that's where you're vibrating. So you might have gotten together in the basement. Let's call it a house. You might have gotten together in the basement. Your vibes might have been there. Maybe you guys were partying, having fun. Maybe, whatever. You guys were vibing here. But one of you started to actually ascend and elevate, right? The vibe is completely different. So sometimes you can't leave that partner. It's hard. But you have to eventually say, this is not what I want for my life. And this is not what I envisioned it to be. But I love this person, or I was in love with this person at one time. But we're not on the same vibrational level right now. And that's when you realize that was a karmic. That was there for a lesson. But you can't, it's so easy to say, oh, just leave. It's so easy for people to say that until they're in that position. Once they're in that position, then they begin to realize, wait, this is really my life. Now, how do I gather my life? How do I gather myself? And how do I start all over again, basically? And what does that look like? So you guys might have been on the same level in the beginning, and one of you elevated. And the other one, well, they just have not caught up yet. Does that say?
That's if they ever will, right? The
Yeah.
7 comments, if they ever will. Let me welcome Peter and say, Popeye for weightlifting abilities and genius. So thank you for joining us, Peter. I appreciate you being here. So Max says a lot of abuse arises out of economic reasons, and that becomes a reason to take their frustrations out on their loved ones. What say you, Dr. Yvonne? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, no. It can, if they want to make that excuse. But like cancer, economic reasons has nothing to do with it.
Mm.
You have people that went through the freaking depression. They weren't beating up their wives. You have people, on Black Monday a few years ago, what was that, 07, that literally were jumping out windows because their whole stock portfolio crashed. They didn't go home and beat up their wives. Or you have people that have gotten no breaks in life, and they're just as loving as they want to be. They might have issues paying a bill or whatever, but they love their spouse, they love their family, they love their children. I mean, economics, I'm not saying it wouldn't be something in some cases, because you can't be broad about a subject like this. But the fact of the matter is, no, that senator was not hurting economically when he tried to kill his wife.
I hear you. I think I guess, in Mac, I think I'm understanding from your word of what you say, in that there's a frustration, there's an anger, there's a hopelessness that often leads to taking out things on your loved ones. It doesn't justify. Of course, it doesn't. Nothing justifies at all. But I think that it's a reason. Maybe it's a correlation, Dr. Yvonne, on some level. But no.
Again, life has pressures. Everyone's life has pressures. No, I'm sorry, that's an excuse.
Yes, I
it is an excuse, and an excuse is tools of the incompetent and the weak.
It's a choice that someone makes.
It is a choice, just like cheating. It's a choice. It's a choice. A million people go through economic situations. It doesn't mean they're going to all go home and say, oh, I'm stressed right now to pay a bill. Let me just kick her ass a little bit. Yeah, no. I mean, I'm not saying that it can't play into it if the person's crazy, right? Because I think anybody beating on anybody else is insane. Like, I don't beat my kids. And even though I saw these women, a lot of those men, especially if they have girl children, didn't beat their girls. I never got a spanking.
And sometimes the beating doesn't have to be physical. It could be emotional.
It is emotional, yes.
Because a lot of the times the physical piece is not there. They don't lose it, right? It's more about how they behave and how they act and how they respond. And I've got to tell you, what I have seen is that a lot of the times they're reacting or responding based on what they know, and sometimes what they were taught or what was ingrained on them since they were little, right? And it takes a lot of awareness and desire to change in order for people to take that step. Because I mean, I can talk about 100 different examples that I have gone through, but I would say, if you want to, like, it's first recognizing that there's a need to change. And a lot of the times the person with the behavior does not recognize that there's a need to change until they either touch rock bottom or they are put in a situation where they actually hurt someone. And like that's their awakening, right?
They're
Yeah.
taking responsibility.
Mhm.
A lot of narcissists do not take responsibility.
Absolutely.
And the thing about it is, it's like, look at what you made me do. Why did you do that? If you hadn't done that, then guess what? I wouldn't have done this. They don't take responsibility. They don't know what that is. And so what they do is, oh, they tear you down, right? And you react because that's what they want to see. They want that reaction. They feed on that. That they're vampires. They feed on that. And then they get the reaction. If anybody else is there, they'll say, "Do you see how crazy she gets or how insane they are? And for what? I didn't do anything," knowing what they did and knowing you have post-traumatic stress syndrome from all those other times, right? It's not until, like you said, they hit rock bottom, they realize that, guess what? The same person you thought was going to be there forever and I could treat them however I want, literally filed papers and is literally leaving you. Then they come up with, I'll go to therapy, I'll do this, I'll do that. But do they go through with it? That's the big one.
And one thing I want to add is there's a difference, and I don't know if you guys talked about this earlier because I joined a little bit late, but there's a difference between the having narcissistic traits, which I think every individual that is in this planet at some point in their life we behave in a narcissistic way, one way or another. And who tells me that they don't, I'm sorry, but that's not true, because we're learning, we sometimes we're self protection comes first, right? But it's more about recognizing that it's not just like, this was a once in a blue moon type of behavior, versus it's something that it's very into their personality and to who they are and how they behave under every single circumstance. Because I feel, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Dr. Yvonne, but I feel like people use the concept of narcissist, they overuse the concept of narcissist, and not everyone, like not every hard situation with a partner or with a spouse or with a child, with your mother, not every situation, not every situation is a narcissistic, or not all of them are narcissistic relationships.
That's true.
And we have to be careful about that too.
That's true. So everyone is on a spectrum with narcissism. You're right. All of us has something, but the illness of narcissism is something completely different.
Absolutely.
That is someone that knows, they know this behavior. They know it. And the manipulation is how they keep it going. If they're in a family, they choose a scapegoat. There's going to be a golden person and there's going to be a scapegoat. The scapegoat is the one that stands up to the narcissist no matter what age that one is. And the golden child, well, they're just going to pick somebody and say, this is the one that I'm going to put above everybody else in the household. Someone that has narcissistic behavior is different than someone that has narcissistic tendencies.
Traits.
And as I said, it's on a spectrum, just like every other mental illness. And being human, we all have a little bit of something. We all have a little bit of something, but it is the true narcissist that has a touch of being psychotic, because they will hurt you. They will lay there while you cry after they hurt you emotionally, and then be like, what are you crying for?
Mm-hmm.
And they know what to do to make you cry. That's different than, maybe one day you're having a bad day and you say something that is completely off color and you're hurting, somebody else's feeling. You could put that into the thought of it being narcissistic, but you are not a narcissistic person. There is a complete difference. And because narcissism is abuse, we do have to be careful. And it's interesting that you brought up the mother thing, because I think that was like one of the hardest realizations I had, the hardest. And it wasn't throwing narcissism, the word narcissism out. It was actually hearing myself that, you know, I just don't like you. Wish you never lived. I, you know, I mean, that's enough right there. But it's even worse after the one person that you really knew was protecting you is gone. And you're in your adulthood with your own family. I'm supposed to be dealing with this. I am supposed to be enlightening others about this. I am supposed to be helping other women with this, because it was a journey to get to the point where I am right now, to be live with people watching me who entrusted me with many important things, lots of money, and their businesses, building their homes or building their commercial buildings, or doing their legal paperwork, or even teaching the classes, that I teach. To honestly stand up there and say, all this time, I did not know that there was a correlation between abuse, bad behavior, narcissism, and all that other stuff that goes along with dealing with social issues in your family. And, because you can also have a narcissistic boss. You can have a narcissistic sister or brother or aunt or grandparent. So, it's not just a couple thing. Narcissism, like I said, everyone is on a spectrum. But I feel that part of what I am supposed to be doing is bringing light to a lot of these issues, but more than anything, building back the woman, the female energy, the divine feminine energy, allowing us to be able to sit in the posture of receptivity. But in order to do that, in order to live that way, in order to be that divine feminine, we have to be able to be honest with ourselves, honest with those around us, and spend enough time loving ourselves so that we can love everybody else, you know? But the first thing is to appreciate ourselves and live our soft life and live in our divine female energy. And that was the journey that started for me in 2017. But of course, that means that it is holistic. You can't fix this part and not that part. You can't do this and not that. And you're never going to be perfect. but you've got to put yourself first, which is a very hard thing for women to do, especially moms. It's very hard for us to put ourselves first. But when you start going through dark night of the soul, you start realizing where you need to be. So yeah, we can't use that term lightly.
Absolutely. Annie, I wanted to share because I came into to the session a little bit later, but I heard Mr. M and we were talking about like, and I wanted to share like something that I learned in my neuro-linguistic programming training, if I may. And it's the story of the lead heartbeat. So it's something I have shared in multiple audio rooms before, but I think it's something for us to consider and for us to recognize the power that we have in ourselves. We put a lot of power into others, but in reality, the real power is within each of us, right? So there's this story that, and I can get you the name of the book where it is and all of that. I don't remember out of the top of my head, but it's about the scientists that were doing a study on heart cells. And they had all these heart cells beating at different rhythms. Some were stronger, some were weaker. And all of these heart cells were in different petri dish. And what they did is they said, what if we take all of these heart cells and we put them together in the same petri dish? What would happen with them? And they did. And what ended up happening was something that surprised them significantly and at the same time gave them a lot of knowledge, which is all of the other heart cells aligned to the strongest heart cells, right? To the strongest heartbeat. So, which tells you that at the end of the day, the lead heartbeat is the one that will pull everybody in. Now, when we consider lead heartbeat, we can think of it in two ways. We can think of it as the one who is very toxic. If it's the lead heartbeat, it will pull everybody in, or the one that it's very strong and it's has done the work, it's in their own personal development awakening journey and has done a lot of healing, becomes then the lead heartbeat, and then people tend to migrate to that. So if we take this into our life and in terms of toxic people, when we do the work within ourselves, knowing that we cannot change the other individual, but that we can change ourselves, we only have control over ourselves, right? So when we do this and we do the work on ourselves, then either the person who is toxic in the relationship stays or leaves. If they stay, they do the work. If they leave or you end up leaving them, it's because there's not an alignment there. But every experience that we have, including those toxic relationships, are there because it's part of our growth. And when we see it as part of our growth and we are able to move through it and move out of it in a very positive way, then we're growing. And that's what I wanted to share.
That is genius. That's why I call you Super Coach Brenda Lees. That's deep as well, right?
I love you, Annie. I love you. But I like when he was talking, and I know I missed. I'm gonna have to go back to the recording. I missed most of the conversation. But I like when he was talking. I'm like, okay, let me share. Maybe this is something I love telling stories, analogies, metaphors. I think people learn a lot with them. So yeah, that's what I thought. And I'm celebrating today, Annie. It's my
What
birthday.
are you celebrating?
It's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Yes. I'm like,
present
I'm
on
gonna
us.
go. I haven't been in a lot of events lately, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna jump in and yeah, why not? It's my
Yeah,
birthday. I can do
please.
whatever I want.
You can, of course, you can. You can do whatever you want every day of the week, really. Look, please put happy birthday to Coach Brenda Lees in the comments. Let's wish her the best day ever. man, there's a load of comments. Dr. Yvonne, we're not going to get through any of them, really, to be fair. We're going to have to respond to the comments afterwards because
These
Dr.
are
Yvonne,
great. I
you
can't
said,
believe it. I can't believe it. Wow. I just want to thank everybody. I really do. I can't
yeah,
believe how this was accepted. Yeah.
it's any grins, like a peacock effect. I grin at myself, right? Now, look, it's an important conversation, and this is just a start, my friends. And Natalie, thank you for sharing resources. Natalie shared a load of links that could be helpful, especially if you're in the UK. So do go to the comments and do check out those comments, and do engage with people who are here. Look, I always say in these events, in my events especially, I don't like to think people come here with issues and leave with the same issues. So if you need to reach out to someone, please do. If that's Dr. Yvonne, if that's anyone else that like a friend, please do. Don't suffer in silence. That's we're past that. So let's be let's reach out for help where necessary. And like everyone's even Fresh Brenda just said, if we need to do the work and the internal work within ourselves, let's begin that work. One day, one person is too many. One day is too long, right? Yeah. Again, I'm always minded to what you said earlier, Dr. Yvonne. Who wants to be that person who wakes up, dead in their own bed? The abusers can never rest, right? I truly believe that you can never sleep with two eyes closed. It's a problem, right? It's a real problem, and people have to. We have to learn to. Maybe the first thing is to save ourselves. That's the first thing we need to learn, right? I see. So Max says it's a habit. It's habits that get passed from generation to generation. It's not your. Of course, it's not your DNA. No one is genetically programmed to be, an abuser.
A horrible person.
I could use other words. I didn't. I haven't sworn, right? I've been very good. But Mac, I agree with you. It's not. No one's inherently born to be, what I could use, like I say, an abuser is a simple word I can use, right? It's habits, it's things we learn, it's ways that we choose to behave, amongst other things. So Mike says, Mac, some studies show that behaviors can become genetic. Indeed, toxicity can become genetic when it's passed down, but it's not. It's not really. It's not. Yes, it can affect your DNA, Mike. I get that.
I got to tell you, do you know why Jamaican people will not adopt unless they're adopting in their family? Do you want to know why?
Please tell us.
Because they believe that the bloodline. So like, if your father was a thief, all right, and something happened, but you're not in that family, all right, you're not in that family, and you need to be adopted, but you're not in that bloodline. Another family is not going to adopt you. And I thought that was the weirdest thing, because here adoption is like, everybody wants children to have a good home. But there it goes from family to family. It's family adoption. But to adopt a child that they're not blood, yeah, that's something. I think that they might be changing a little bit of that now, because everybody is evolving. But that was very true of our culture. So if somebody was a murderer or a bank robber or something like, they're not going to adopt that kid because they believe it's in the blood.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just some cultures that are like that. So sometimes people would argue that it might be the bloodline. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was in a room, Christiana's room last week, I think, and she was talking about maternal trauma that's passed on from generation to their first daughters, especially. I think I read a piece of research that says like maternal trauma can change your DNA. You know, even like they can actually see changes in your DNA, which you know despite I think Dr. Yvonne, we still have to break the chain somewhere. I have to break the
You have
chain
to
now.
break the chain. Yeah, I broke the chain.
Yes, and
I broke it. I was the changeling. But remember, the changeling is not popular. And, you know, people want to keep things buried. And a lot of people stand on appearances. I've never really cared about appearances. And I don't like liars. And I can't stand and sit in silence when I see people hurt or injured or being, you know, treated poorly. I do get involved. Um, but this is a different type of involvement. This is a take back your power, take back your femininity, know that you're the creature that carries life and that everything about you it should be soft. Now, you should be able to be tough, because they say someone goes after a woman's kid, she can find the strength of 10 men.
Mama bears, they call them, right?
Exactly. And I'm definitely that. I would blow a hole in this whole entire planet for my kids. I have no problem with that. I don't care. Just leave my kids alone. That's how most mothers are. But this type of behavior has to stop somewhere in a family. And while it might not be actually in the blood, in the DNA, it's behavioral.
Yes, for sure.
And once that person steps forward and says, this is it, no more, no more, the next generation is not going to see that behavior. So they won't be able to model it.
And we can teach our kids, one, to not put up with such behavior at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also teach our sons that is never the way to go. As Michael said, if you see signs of that in your relationship, walk away. That I totally understand. I agree with you. We need to teach our sons more loudly. Christiana, thank you for joining us.
Hello.
The fact you joined us, 45 minutes after we were meant to have left, but please talk to us. What's your take on it?
I'm so sorry. You know me and my life, Annie. There is always something happening. It's good to be here. It's good to be here. Hello, Dr. Yvonne. And happy birthday, Brandon X. It's so nice to actually see you and see you both. I put a message on or comment in the chat. And really it was to touch on what Dr. Yvonne was saying about how narcissists tend to make one child the scapegoat and the other the favorite. And what I would really want to say wasn't just about just that alone. It's the fact that it is sometimes disguised as they're sometimes disguised as the matriarch of the home. Therefore, all of the hearts will pull to that one person. Not just the fact that they are. And to be honest with you, when we think about narcissism, let's think about where it's coming from. Learned behavior, definitely, but it does get passed down from generation to generation. And in any case, what I was speaking about last week, and as you know, first daughters and mothers, there seems to be a correlation, a huge one between first daughters and mothers and narcissism. It's something that I'm still looking into, as you know. and I've been looking into for so many years, this pattern that emerges, it gets passed down to first daughter to the next first daughters, and so on and so forth. Sometimes the chain does get broken when it happens to be first sons. So the traits, and not just the traits, the pattern that I've seen is that you find that individual that seems to be the matriarch, or that seems to be the leading heart of narcissism, and then everybody else has to find a way. And the other thing is, they tend to pull allies very quickly. The huge factor that fuels all of it is manipulation. They're very good at manipulation. And what I find concerning is that in a public domain, they could be the loveliest, or seemingly the best people, the loveliest people, the most kind, but sometimes they are the pillar of the community or within the community. And they have people on side that will vouch, that will just say, look, what are you talking about? It's all in your head, and so on and so forth. But they know how to play the manipulation game very well. You know, they may not have begun that way, or parts would have been passed down to them, but they master it. They become masters at manipulation. And so you are left thinking, is it me? It must be me. But here's the thing. The boundary we set is really important. And I know I came late to the show, and maybe this has already been said, but the boundary, the very clear boundary. I've known people who have left the town they're in, left the city they're in, to put a huge distance, just so that they can really work on themselves and find out that it wasn't them all along. It was just the fact that they had somebody else who was very controlling and who has this condition. And I call it condition because they are conditioned, you know. So it's really important that we think about the boundaries that we put in place. And sometimes you are seen as, you know, the outcast that also manifests itself as an estrangement. So you become estranged to your whole family, sometimes to your siblings, to your, you know, to your cousins, your aunts. Your whole entire family could literally abandon you, you know. So masters are very good at what they do. They really are, unfortunately. With therapy, and I remember speaking to a therapist, and this is a discussion I've had over the years, is that one thing that it's unfortunate, narcissists don't always recover from being a narcissist. It's not something you recover from, because they are who they are, and they will continue to perpetuate those behaviors. It is I suppose I won't say victim. I don't like to call people victims, but it's the person experiencing that behavior.
Survivor.
So I guess survivors. Again, that's a word that I try and stay away from, Dr. Yvonne, because it's, yes, there are words that I try and stay away from, to be honest with you. But it's the person that is on the receiving end, recipient of that behavior, is the one that really the onus is on to then be able to keep that distance, to work on themselves, to have the security. Because one of the things that narcissists do end up doing is leaving you sometimes feeling insecure, and you've got to really walk away to find the security and find the balance, to set a foundation of security within yourself to truly move forward and live a different life, you know. So this conversation for me is something that I love. Although I'm late to it, there's so much I can say about it. But thank you so much.
Well, you brought up some really great points, which was going to be like in the next discussion.
Yes.
But since you touched on it, let's just hit it, and then I think we're going to be wrapping it up in a minute. But
yes,
you're right on every count. When I learned what narcissism was, I didn't even know it was a word.
Okay.
I didn't know it was a thing
Mm-hmm.
because culturally, for me, a lot of those behaviors are normal.
Yes. Yes.
They become
Yeah.
normal, and
Yes.
I think that well, I don't think, I know that the Caribbean kids that I grew up with, the Jamaican and the Cuban kids
Mm-hmm.
that I grew up with,
Mm-hmm.
we are totally in the same boat. These
Yeah.
were things that were like normal in our homes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when we realize that we have normalized behavior that is
Yes.
abnormal,
Mm-hmm.
then we take a closer look at how they allowed it, how
Yes.
our how our parents allowed it, how our grandparents allowed it, how our society allowed it. Because when I was growing up, we really were a society. We
Yes.
weren't people living next door to each other and didn't know our
Mm-hmm.
names.
Your
we
community.
we were a society.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you heard about what I was first talking about, domestic violence, and they were kind of grooming the girls to think that this was
Normal. Mm-hmm.
normal behavior,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and leaving the boys outside of it, and yet the boys would see the beatings and stuff, but they wouldn't see the aftermath. Only the girls would have to sit there and see that. So
Yes.
narcissism is really the same kind of thing.
Mm.
Now, the narcissist wants to keep you off balance, you see,
Of course.
because once you're off balance, and they always go for women
Mm-hmm.
that are successful,
Mm-hmm.
that are strong.
Yes.
A lot of times they're desired by many other people.
Absolutely.
And when
Yes.
they go
That's a
out there
threat.
in public,
Yeah,
yes,
that's a
when
threat.
they go out, oh,
So I was saying because that's a threat. It's a threat. It's a threat to them.
well,
We
but that's what attracts them, right? And then they say, I'm going to break it down, break it down, break it down. And they do.
yes. Yes.
And she still presents as, her herself, like, she's a lawyer, she's a doctor, she's a school
Mm-hmm.
teacher. She's still, because out there on the outside, everyone sees that.
Yes,
All
of
right.
course. Of course. You're
Because
gonna
remember,
gain that.
there's 3 stages of being, right?
Yes.
There is the public stage of being.
Mm-hmm.
There is that next stage, which is, associate, kind of friend,
Yes.
business, and then there's the
The
personal, that's
private.
behind the
It's a
door.
private. Yes. Yes.
And so there are two other doors that other people have to go through that they will not see
Yes.
the
Mm-hmm.
third door.
Mm-hmm.
And the narcissist appears to be like everything every other person wants. Oh my God, he
You're
knows how to
amazing.
give you water. Oh my God, he gives you coffee. Oh my
Yes.
God, he calls you. Oh, I wish I had him. Okay,
Yes. They're
but
so kind. They're lovely.
yeah,
They're amazing.
oh, they're just the greatest.
They're so
And
sweet.
then when you get mad, they're like, "Oh, how do you even deal with her? Like,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
what the heck do you have to deal with?
Deal with
I'm
it.
so proud of you to stay that long." They have no
Clue.
idea
They
that
have no
you
clue.
don't have your money is messed up, because they
Yes.
make sure, because they don't want you
Mm-hmm.
to get away. Your money is messed up. Your self-esteem is in the toilet because you don't feel attractive. and
Mm-hmm.
and they and they make sure to tell you you're not attractive. And then when you start figuring out that, okay, well, he's not touching me, who's he touching? And then you start looking at the signals.
Yes.
And when you can break down the signals
Mm-hmm.
and you start saying, okay, I know that he's found whatever passion it is that
Mm-hmm.
he's going to suck the life out of,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to be on hold for a while.
So here.
When you start realizing this, this
And
is when you start deciding to yourself,
yes.
hold on, thank you for getting away from me so that I now can start loving me appreciating me, knowing me, and knowing that, yes, I do things right outside of the public self. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I hope that you're in the next discussion because,
here is what two
this
things I'm going
is
to
true.
say, Dr. Yvonne. Two
True.
things. The first being, when you get to the point, so firstly, it is normalized in many communities. That's the first thing to say. The second thing is, people who want to come away from that, one of the first feeling that you feel about pulling yourself away is feeling disloyal to even that person who was treated you so badly, because you're thinking, oh my goodness, there's still either a spouse, or there's still a family member, there's still a mother. But here's what I say, and this is ways of moving forward and coming away from that. It's really having to separate your mind of, for example, if that's happening from your brother or your sister, is dropping that F word, which is the family, or the friend, dropping that word and looking at a person with from the lenses of an individual. If I met this person today, would I tolerate this behavior? Would I be okay with the patterns I'm experiencing or observing or witnessing? Would I have all of these things? What would I really say about this person if I met them today? If they've been around it for a few months, I've known them, would I want to be around them, associate with them? Because once you begin to do that and remove the labels, you begin to really understand what is happening. Because now you are removing the emotional attachment that you have to that individual.
Well, and you also have to. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, for some, it's literally moving from a physical space to as miles away as possible away from them. But you still have to really get yourself in that frame of mind. It's not always easy to do so. Not everybody is able to even think about that and to navigate or identify those things, right? It does take a while, depending on how good or who you're surrounded by, and the fact that your experience is that it was normalized. It can be quite difficult. But what I'm saying is, really think about it. Start removing those labels which you put on, whether it's a parent or whether it's a brother or a sister. Pause for a moment and think, okay, if you're not my brother, my sister, how would I really receive you, accept you, or deal with what I'm experiencing with you for as long as I've experienced it? And for some, and I'll say for some, that begins to really give you the power and the control, because we have the power of the control to really choose how you decide to react or not react, or what you decide to do. Because the one thing narcissists love is control, ultimately. So those are the two things I'm going to really say about this. But there's so much to say about this topic, and I touched on it when I spoke about first daughters and mothers, because there is a correlation between first daughters and mothers and a narcissistic behavior patterns in those relationships, whether it stems from parentification of the daughters, and so on and so forth. So, but there is that thin line, and the correlation between first daughters and mothers.
Honestly, it's because I'm the last kid and the last
I'm the first
daughter. And oh my God, where have you been? So yes, and even yes more. But sometimes you just have to do the cold break. But the one thing you got to remember spiritually is that you or them, actually them, they were meant, you came in their life, it was an agreement, whether you know, however you want to look at it. we make agreements when we come back into this world. And you were there, or they were there, to teach you a karmic lesson. And you were there because prior to teaching them that lesson, you had to learn, and this is why I'm speculating, is that you're an empath. And because you're an empath, narcissistic people levitate towards empaths. And that's because they have no empathy themselves. Their souls are empty. A
I
lot of
was
them are sociopathic. They don't even get that. But when you start realizing that, this is not it, they make sure to take away your freedoms. And in doing that, yes, they get to control. So when I work with people, the first thing that we work on is our security, your security.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And from that, you then become that force, that mirror that they don't want to see.
No.
And you gain your strength. You get your power back. You gain your strength, and you begin to understand your own vitality and what that looks like. And once you do that, there's no turning back for that narcissist, and
No.
there's no turning back for you. And sometimes you got to do cold turkey.
Yes, I agree.
And it's okay. It's okay. But
Absolutely.
well, see, I know who I'm talking to. I know who I'm talking to. I already know. So what happens is you start saying to yourself, well, gee, I'm looking a lot better these days. And gee, hey, I'm going out there and getting, a million phone numbers. I might not want them, but gee, it's my light is beginning to show. I'm beginning to love myself now, and it's coming out. It's busting. That's because you no longer wearing his shroud or her shroud. And what you've done is you said, this is as far as it goes. And you've put up those boundaries, because before there were no boundaries. Or if there were boundaries, you didn't enforce them. And they kept their foot on your neck.
Can I make a point? I completely agree with what you're saying, 100%. But here's the thing: when narcissists are dealing with younger, so we're speaking about those who perhaps are adults and older,
Yeah.
young adults and older. When it begins with, early teens or teenagers, it is that manipulation. So I'll give you an example of what that manipulation could look like, where they manipulate you in the form of, I really care about you. I'm saying this for your safety. I'm saying this for you, to help you. When they know that is not the case, there are other reasons. So we spoke about freedom. This is how a freedom can be taken away. It is disguised as, I really care. I don't want you to go here or do this or do that because, it might be dangerous, or I care about you. But in their mind, they are slowly demonstrating the power and control they have over you without even you realizing that.
We became obsessed with these brands. If
you're and so that's what happens. By the time you get to your teens into adulthood, that, I say, claw is well and truly into you, and you really have to work and be conscious and find ways. It's important. I'm saying this for anyone who is listening or going to be watching this on a replay, who themselves may even have people they know that may not know what they're going through or understand it. It can start from very young. I liken it to the Stockholm syndrome, where you return to your perpetrator without realizing you're actually reinforcing that behavior. And so it's really key to understand what is happening, how it does. It's very subtle. It begins very subtle before it takes hold, and depending on how old or how young that individual is.
It also, see, and I love that you said that, because that spurns on self-talk. Self-talk can be the most detrimental thing to you as a
Absolutely.
person.
Yes.
And one of the exercises that I make my clients do has a lot to do with self-talk. Because, like, you could say to yourself, oh, I deserve the world. I deserve that car. I deserve that house. I deserve the world. You could say it. But in the back of your mind, your self-talk is something totally different. You're wondering whether or not you deserve it. Why do you deserve it? I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that.
Yes.
Again, this is something that has been heaped upon you. And on one of my lives, I said, you don't always answer to the name that they've placed on you. At one point, you've got to say, oh, and I'm going to swear here, hell no, that's not me. That is what you want me to be. That is the version that you painted me to be to other people.
Yes.
Right? Because they've got to build up some kind of onus against you so other people can see it.
Yes.
But when
and have
they're
witnesses too.
masks,
And have witnesses too.
yes.
Mhm.
When their masks drop and everybody starts to realize it wasn't you, you were just reacting. And you said something very, very crucial too. You said the way you choose to act. That was one of the first lessons. Choosing how to respond. Because they're vampires. They need you to respond a certain way.
Yes.
So, teaching people, or, teaching myself, right? Because how could you teach something that you've not been through yourself? What I learned is, the sooner I am in touch with myself, the more I love myself, the more I stop allowing them to use me for whatever it is.
Or have
Because that's
effect
what
on
they
you.
do. You start healing. The best thing an abuser, a narcissist, anything can do for you is leave you alone. Because that
Absolutely.
forces you to heal. And that brings back your stability.
Yes. But again, you would have to really allow that to happen, because sometimes they may not want to do that. So you have to take the onus falls on you to take that lead and to force that to happen. To really force that to happen.
It's all you. It's all you. It's all you. It's not them. The change has to begin with you. That's why the love is so important for yourself. And that's why you have to look at it holistically. And I lost you, but I hope you come back. And I hope you see this on replay. But it's all you. It's always going to fall on you. It's when you decide, I can't take any more of this. How do I change my life? And sometimes it's after the kids are all gone. Other times it's plotting and planning to get out so the kids don't grow up in that. So, yes.
Yeah, Christiana's come back. Look, my friends, I have another event to do. Dr. Yvonne, 2 hours and 34 now. We said an hour and a half maximum. Hour, we said, right? But that always happens. Look, it's
I
an amazing.
lost my other appointment. That was who I was talking to.
It's a huge topic. I think it affects so many people for us not to do what you're doing, which is to bring let's start the conversations. These sensitive topics require conversations to find a way to be better people. That's my take.
Yeah.
So Natalie did say in the comments before my computer crashed that you are remarkable and thank you for bringing the topic to us. I lost a comment somewhere when I restart my device. I lose comments, right? But thank you so much, Christiana. What do you want to leave us with?
So my last thought is to say that you're not alone, because often when things happen, we tend to want to work in isolation, or we don't know that's happening, or we question whether that's really happening. Find the strength to reach out to somebody else. These days you have groups, especially online, you have groups of people who have come together, support groups for those who've experienced narcissists. So you can find a group, online, and people are talking more about it now because it's a little bit like miscarriage, right? We were visibly or invisibly gagged about things because the community and the society that we find ourselves in. And now people are speaking about these issues because they are real. They have a real impact emotionally, psychologically, physically for some. So my last thought is, do not suffer in silence. Reach out, find professional help, find community help and support. And if you're struggling with that, find a book that will help you to really understand what you're going through. In addition to that, if this is happening from a family member or family at home, try to remove the labels, because the labels is what really sometimes gets you stuck in that situation, because you're feeling almost emotionally guilty or disloyal to your own to your own camp. You're not making it up. You're not paranoid. It really is happening. Help yourself by getting some support and reach out for help. That's my last word. Thank you, Annie, and thank you, Dr. Yvonne.
Thank you, Christiana.
Wow.
I totally agree with you. Look, I must welcome Lorraine. Lorraine, you made it. Welcome, Lorraine. Lorraine is behind a fashion brand that we work with. I've been trying to get her to our events forever, but you're here, Lorraine. Welcome to the live stream. If you look through the comments, you see the engagement, and people. Our friends have spoken beautifully about this very difficult topic. I'm just glad you're here. So thank you so much for being here. Dr. Yvonne, what are you going to leave us with? Lorraine, I'll send you my YouTube link to watch a replay. That's the best thing I can do, right?
What am I going to leave? What am I going to leave?
Yeah.
Well, first, I'm going to leave a really big thank you for everyone who came out to this first event. And I'm going to leave another really big thank you to everyone who got involved in it. But the one thing I am going to say as far as my parting words on this or any other subject is that no matter what you're going through, no matter where you are at this very current and present time, remember that you have the ability to not only help other people, but help yourself. And when you realize that self-help spurns on self-love, self-dignity, and hope, you then can turn any situation around. Now, yeah, we got into this subject. It's a juicy subject. But my whole thing is, how do we get rid of this? How do we move from this? So in this series, yeah, we're going to explain all this. We're going to bring it all out because people don't want to talk about the ugly. But in order to heal, guess what has to happen? It has to come out. So please come back and please share it with your friends. Let's make a change in our own little corner of the world. And then collectively, it'll be a movement. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out and for participating. And look for some of the traits in other people that you know might be going through things. And it doesn't mean that you get involved in their life. It just means that some kind of way you let people know, hey, if you ever want to talk to me or anything like that, I'm here, or I have resources for you. But it's not something you could just go and attack, because this is a very personal conversation that people have to first have within themselves in order to share it with other people. And thanks again for coming. I totally appreciate it. And Annie, thank you for making me do this.
You have no choice.
I'm always guilty. I'm guilty as charged. I get everyone to do lives because it's the way to engage with people in real time.
That.
Always. Tracy, hopefully Dr. Yvonne is, maybe we'll make how do we help our next topic.
Mm-hmm.
Our next event. That's next Wednesday or the Wednesday after that. So every 2 weeks or every week. But we'll come to that. Because I think we need to know how to support people properly. But as Dr. Yvonne says, it's a very sensitive subject, and I know from experience as well. Jumping in only gets me stabbed in the bum by the fighting parties, which is never a good thing, right? It's not a good
That's
look.
why it's so dangerous when the police are called or other people. Domestic violence, literally, that's a dangerous call to take,
It really is. It really is. What did I say? We'll talk about that in good time, Tracy.
Yeah.
Christy, welcome. As I said, whether you join us beginning, middle, end of our event, I always thank you. And I'll send you my YouTube as well, Christy. I'm sure you haven't subscribed yet, right? I need more subscribers. Dr. Yvonne, have you subscribed to my channel? You might have.
Yes, I believe I have. Yeah.
Excellent. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, my friends, go along, subscribe, please.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel, no. You guys can follow me on everything. No.
And are you ready for tomorrow?
Of course I'm ready for tomorrow. I'm ready for my event tonight first.
Tomorrow is a miscarriage, baby loss, and identity. Wow.
Yes.
Getting lost in all of it.
Join us for my show later, and we'll tell people properly, Christiana. So being your authentic self in business is on in a couple of hours. Well, an hour and a bit now.
That's a big one.
I tell you, it really is. So
that's a big one.
We're talking about brands transgressions. What does that look like?
Oh my goodness.
I don't really care. I don't care about crisis management. That's not my thing, right? My thing is what do we do to really piss our clients off?
You, Tracy.
It's all of that, right? It's all of that. Thank you indeed, my friends. Shannon, I see you too. Welcome. Like I said, I'll share the link, my YouTube link, with everyone who came in late as far as I know, right? But do join us again. Connect to Dr. Yvonne. Dr. Yvonne has a lot of work to do in the comments. You say what happens next, Dr. You have to go through the comments and respond to people. So
okay. Oh, geez.
It might take days.
Yep, it does.
But I thank you all. Thank you all.
Dr. Yvonne. It was so nice to meet you.
Oh, so great to meet you. Oh, we're gonna be friends.
Book a meeting.
I already see it. I know. Believe me, I see certain things. Yeah.
Yes.
Book meetings, right?
All right, we'll do.
Take care, everyone. Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
Take care.
everyone. Thanks
Thanks.
for
Bye-bye.
coming.
Celebrate it with or without champagne or rum. Achieve success with Global.Media.